Good morning, everyone. My name is Aaron Adams, City Manager for the City of Temecula, and I'd just like to welcome you all to this rededication of the Temecula Community Center, which is the home of the first Temecula City Council meeting that was held on December 1st, 1989. And I think it's fitting that we're celebrating 25 years as a city, and we're able to rehab our oldest city facility, our oldest asset, as we've been talking a lot about maintaining excellence in this community. So very, very pleased that we're here today for this grand opening. I also want to encourage everyone to stick around afterwards, and there's going to be some brief tours. We have refreshments, and so we hope you'll take a moment and stick around. Also, if you can't really appreciate what this means, there are some before and after photos over there on the wall, which will really give you a glimpse of what this facility looked like and what it is today. I'd like to introduce a few folks that we have with us, and some of which you will hear from shortly. The general contractor is here, and I'd like to recognize from LDCO, Luann Dottie. Would you please stand? And also we have Osama Debiz. Please stand. And anytime your public works staff says, hey, the general contractor was great to work with, that's a real testament to you guys, so well done. Also, we have our architect here from Williams Architects, Renee Glenn. Would you please stand? Thank you. We have the mayor of the city of Temecula, Mary Ann Edwards. And it's also her birthday, so happy birthday, Mayor.
Don't ask.
We have Mayor Pro Tem and Community Services District President, Jeff Comachero. We have Council Member Chuck Washington. And Councilman Roberts and Councilman Nagar could not be with us this morning. But from Riverside County 3rd District, we have Supervisor Jeff Stone. And from our Community Services Commission, we have Commissioner Zach Schwenk, Commissioner Eric Willis, and Commissioner Jim Myler. Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge all the city staff, the public works, the capital improvement staff, as well as the community services folks that made all this happen, from construction to design to building to today's event and planning. So to the city staff, great job. At this time, I'd like to invite Commissioner Jim Myler up, who is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So would you please stand?
Place your hands over your heart and begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. At this time, I'd like to invite up Mayor Mary Ann Edwards.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is amazing. Standing here just brings back so many memories. I have served so many turkey dinners in this room, from that opening about right over there to the kitchen, and I have eaten so many rubber chicken dinners in this room so many years ago, and had so many teas here, and I have sung at memorial services here, and I don't think I've been to any weddings here, but I know there have been weddings here, and safe events. I couldn't tell you how many dozens, if not hundreds, of events that I have celebrated and memorialized and done everything in this facility. Really, you can almost feel the spirit of Temecula in this building, and so many people that I have loved and miss today, but I think if they were here, they could tell you that really the history of Temecula does rest in this building. So it looks absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad that we have loved it and preserved it and actually revitalized it so that it can go on and move forward with Temecula. So how many of you remember this building from before? Okay, city staff, everybody here remembers the building from before. So I think we really need to bring the new people here and give them an appreciation for the history of the building. And I think we need to put in writing someplace some of the things that happened in this building. I know Dick Birdsall's memorial service was here. I don't know if we did anything for Pat here. I can't remember. I know we had something, Pat Birdsall was certainly a part of this building. I think that Tom and I were here for some of the original city council meetings, and that kind of is what got us started with our love for the process for the city of Temecula. So this certainly does feel like part of our history and the things that we loved about Temecula. It really is the foundation and really the birthplace of the city. So good job, city staff and colleagues and everyone that has had a part of this, of keeping this part of Temecula history and moving it forward. So thank you all for coming today, and I'm just so proud to see how it looks. I resisted the temptation to walk half a block down here during construction. I resisted, so this is the first time I've seen the building, and it's just absolutely amazing. I'm very happy to see it today, and I'm going to have a guided tour in just a few minutes. So thank you all for coming.
I think you may have planted a seed. I saw John Hunneman, so maybe a column tomorrow on sort of telling some of the stories and the history behind this facility would be, maybe he's already written it. So at this time, could I invite up from Senator Joel Anderson's office, Jocelyn Cuesta. I believe you have a proclamation to present to Mayor Edwards.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Senator Anderson, we just wanted to congratulate you on your grand opening today for the Temecula Community Center. Thank you. It's always a pleasure. There.
Thank you for being here. At this time, I'd like to invite up 3rd District Supervisor Jeff Stone.
Good morning. I'm kind of reminiscing around the room, and a lot of memories are coming back. You talk about the history, the age of this building, and it's very depressing to know I'm a part of the history of this building.
Yeah.
Myself and Peg Moore are the two local people here that probably had the experience of coming into this building, and as we've learned. That local government is the government closest to the people. And that's figuratively true and logically true, because we had many contentious meetings in this room. It's not easy to form a new city. Everybody's trying to position themselves for what they believe to be the vision of the city, and we had our share of very contentious, rambunctious, and colorful meetings, and one that made them very colorful was a gentleman by the name of Carl Lindemans, and may he rest in peace, but he was a great leader in this community that I had the pleasure of serving with. He had a way of making you laugh at sometimes some of the more serious, stressful moments in sitting on a city council. And also serving with Pat Birdsall, may she also rest in peace. I know that if she were here today, because she was a very strong advocate of community services and in our buildings and our senior centers and our parks. We have a beautiful park named in her honor. I know that if she were here today, she would say to the city council and the city staff, a job well done. The building is beautiful. The windows in the back provide for a lot of light. providing a lot of optimism. And I think you'll all agree that in government today, we need a lot of optimism. I remember some very contentious hearings that we had. I remember my first city council meeting. Those of you that were not here, when I was running for city council in 1992, there were not many that really gave me a chance of possibly winning. I was running against a strong incumbent field, including Ron Roberts, who I've been honored to serve with now for 22 years, and he's going to be retiring at the end of his term, and we need to do something, and we'll do something very special for him, not only in the city but in the county, to recognize his 22 years of very productive service that has really enhanced the quality of life of residents of Riverside County. But I remember the first meeting when I was sworn in and took the seat, and we had two items on the agenda. One was a very controversial church project on the corner of Santiago and Yanez. And the other was the Paloma del Sol specific plan. That was before Paloma del Sol was even built. And I remember getting the packet for Paloma del Sol, and this was before we had iPads and really access to inexpensive computers. And I had questioned the wisdom of why I ran for city council when I had this packet that was this thick about Paloma del Sol, and I panicked thinking, my goodness, how in the world, I think we got our packets on Thursdays at that time, how in the world in 4 days and running a business am I going to get through all of this material when 3/4 of the jargon I don't even understand? But I have to give a strong testimonial to people like Gary Thornhill, who was a great planner, and you see his marks all over the city, that Sean Nelson, our community services director at the time, they all helped educate me to try to become a better council member. But we've prided ourselves in the city to have parks from one side of the city to the other. That was my mantra when I ran in 1992, many years ago. And then our funding for maintaining our parks and recreation centers came under assault with Prop 218, where when we incorporated, we basically had three things we had to answer that the citizens did. What would the name of the city be? And who the council members were going to be, and you had to agree to a special tax that was going to maintain the parks that we hadn't built yet, that we were going to build from one side of the city to the other. So a few years later, we had Jeff Comachero, who was on the Community Services Commission at that time, and we were building parks. And I believe that parks bring a lot of quality of life to the constituency, including recreation centers like this. And then we had to go out and revalidate the vote that the citizens took when we incorporated. And not only did we have to win, but we had to win by a 2/3 majority. So that was a hard sell, but I had a very good partner in making sure that we got the message out, and that was Jeff Comachero. Jeff Comachero and I were co-chairs of the Measure C campaign that validated by 10 points more than we needed that the city constituents felt that we were doing a good job in building new facilities and parks and recreation centers for the benefit of our community. And I think that's one of the things that made Temecula great. And then just lastly, probably one of the most important hearings that happened in this room that forever changed the economic posture of Riverside County was a vote to approve with incentives a Walmart on the corner of Yanez and Winchester Road. And I remember sitting on this dais, and there was an incentive that was whittled down from $3 million to $362,000. And I was learning to compromise as a new member of the city council. And so I remember having a discussion with the Walmart attorney that was right there, and I was ready to go for the incentive with one condition. And the one condition was that, sir, you would not build another Walmart within a 10-mile radius of this city because you promised a sales tax from other jurisdictions. Walmart attorney came up and I said, sir, if you'll agree to that condition, I'll vote for this project. Do you accept that condition? And he looked around and he said, no. You could have heard a pin drop in this room. This room had 500 people probably in it. And it was at that point in time that the citizens said, we think we can do better on the piece of property. We did a citizens referendum, and that's where the Regional Mall is today. They created $8 million in perpetual sales tax income, created 2,000 jobs. Was the anchor for power centers and Trader Joe's. The spillover effect has been amazing, and it has really made, and I'm telling you this as chairman of the Board of Supervisors, it has made Temecula the economic powerhouse of Riverside County that has allowed us to fully fund all of these beautiful parks and recreation services and have the greatest public safety services, making us one of the safest cities in the United States. I'm going to tell you, I never had any aspirations of going into politics, never did. Pharmacist, opened my first pharmacy here in 1983, and the best decision I think I've ever made in my life for my family and for me was to move to this beautiful city. And I want to thank the City Council for carrying on the tradition of making this place a wonderful place to live. God bless you all.
Thank you, Jeff. I'd like to invite up Councilman Chuck Washington for some remarks. Chuck.
Thank you, Aaron. If you've got an agenda, you'll notice that I'm not on it to speak. But politicians rarely can pass up the opportunity to speak. I had to pay Aaron something. So here I am. The evolution of Pujol Street continues. Isn't that cool? I mean, when you think back 25 years ago, what this street looked like, what a change. And I'll have to share with you, I really appreciated a lot of what Supervisor Stone had to say about the early days of Murrieta, Temecula. I'm getting ready to lead to Murrieta. Early days of Temecula. We moved to Murrieta from San Diego in '89. And I sort of, like Jeff, had no aspiration to be involved in politics. I was an airline pilot with lots of time on my hands, got involved in the community, and eventually some people approached me and said, would you run for city council? Of course, I had no idea what it was. And talk about baptism by fire, the very first council meeting was one that resulted in a referendum against a project that we had approved. And I got that same stack for a project just north of Murrieta Valley High School. But one of the things that stood out in my mind in those early years, and another candidate on that ballot, and I'd love to remind him of that in 1995 was John Hunneman, running for city council in Murrieta. I'm sure he's happy that I got elected, and he didn't. You know, there's a culture in Murrieta. Some of it is a little bit negative towards Temecula. I was not really aware of that until I got elected.
Where's Aaron Clay? Don't write that down. Write that down.
And I would sort of get, you know, the culture preached from Jack, who was the mayor. And of course, we fought for years about not connecting Diaz and Inez. Finally, we've gotten Inez connected through, which is a boon for the entire region.
Yeah, Diaz is next.
But another bone that Jack would always harp on was that the Californian always gave preference to Temecula. And John was with the Californian for many years. But I would look at those stories and those pictures, and one of the early stories that I noticed was something going on right in this building. And I saw Jeff Stone serving Christmas dinners. That organization or that event was put together and wholly supported by Buck Kimmis, who was actually a Murrieta resident, and also someone that lobbied heavily to get the connection for Diaz. But I was so impressed. I felt like I was the little brother in Murrieta looking up to the big brother in Temecula and learning from how they did things. That there were a lot of things going on in Temecula that Kathy and I, my wife, that we value. And I try to get those kinds of things put into place in Murrieta, and they've come a long way. I lobbied heavily to get the property bought where their current city hall is right now. But eventually we moved here to Temecula. And I'm happy to say that we took the baton from the early leadership of Jeff and Ron, and we've had some amazing progress since I've been on the council, almost, well, 11 years. It's been a lot of fun. I would not have stayed with it if it had not been fun. And what's fun about it is we get to do things like this project. Secondly, I would like to compliment these two, the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. I was speaking with our new city clerk before we sat down to start this program, and we were talking about some of the past elections over the last 6 to 8 years and some of the antagonists that came towards the city council. But throughout all of that discussion, there seemed to be a common theme that we all got along too well.
Yeah.
That was a complaint. We heard people saying, well, you guys always agree, nobody ever votes no. Well, we do our homework before we get to the council meetings. We make sure that an item that's on the agenda is prepared to be voted on, which means if there are issues with it that are going to make the council meeting an ugly scene, we ask staff to continue working on it until they can get it right so that we can support it. But if you've watched us consistently, and I know our commissioners who attend every meeting, we don't always agree. But if we have differences, we set them aside for the benefit of our community. And I have many things in my life that I will look back on and be proud of, and certainly my family, my professional career, my service in the Navy. This service with this group in this city is public service that touches my heart, that I will always, always be proud of. And I think this community center here represents what we can do when we put our hearts and our minds together to achieve something. So, congratulations to everyone who was involved. Thanks to everybody for being here today.
That was really well said, and we're going to put you on the agenda next time, Jeff. At this time, I'd like to invite up our Community Service District President and our Vice Mayor, Jeff Comanchero.
For a guy who wasn't on the agenda, you said an awful lot, you know. And I have to say, almost all of it was very well said. You kind of set me right at Temecula relations back about 15 years, but I know that was all in good fun, and we appreciate the history. Boy, it's just, as Jeff said, you feel it in here. There are ghosts in here, and they're good ghosts, and kind of the ghosts of Temecula past, in a way, and it really feels good to see this building now the way it is. Chuck, and you said it, the area, look at Peugeot Street. For those of you who've been here a long time, as most of us here have, you remember when the pop team was in the caboose, because it was the only way we could get rid of the gang members down here. It was awful. It was a slum. It was a ghetto. It was everything that we don't like to talk about Temecula having. And we don't really have those anymore. But that was the history, and just one of the things that you had to deal with as a growing city. It's just amazing what's here, and I'm listening to the stories and the history, and it evokes so much else. You talk about Carl Lindemans. I didn't serve with him in this building, but I did get to serve with Carl for 2 years in our next city hall, the one before the one we have now. And Carl and I didn't always agree on much. You know, he's a charming guy, but I always respected him for the fact that whatever differences we had, we hashed out somewhere else. And by the time we got into the public's eye at council meetings, we knew where we both stood, and we never let that acrimony show. I liked Carl a lot, don't get me wrong. It's just that we didn't agree on too many things. And you talk about the things that happened in the city that really shaped who and what the city is. I think there were 3 watershed moments the city in a lot of very important decisions. One was certainly the Walmart decision, and I have to agree with Jeff, and he was being a little bit modest. He told you the story, but he didn't really tell you it was really him.
Yeah.
And look at what that did. Not only did we not wind up with a Walmart on what was probably the most important commercial piece in Southwest Riverside County, not probably, it was.
Yeah.
And that's been proven out. But what that did to create the economic engine for the city and the region was phenomenal. And I like to tell the story, I told it last night at a forum again, about Trader Joe's that you mentioned. When I was first elected in '97, all I heard from the residents was, when are we going to get a Trader Joe's? We want a Trader Joe's. And so, newly elected, I was full of vitriol, and I was going to go ahead and I was going to get us a Trader Joe's. That was my job. And so I started calling them. And their headquarters was over in Torrance at the time. And I talked to their site locators and their expansion people, and I always got the same answer. The area's not ready, we're not expanding right now. The answer was no. And I would call every month, and I'd get the same answer. And I'd send them every piece of demographic information we had about how we were growing and what the area could sustain, and I always got a no. And then the Promenade Mall opened in October of 1999, and Trader Joe's called me. Said, Jeff, can you help us find a spot? I said, yeah, I'd love to. But that was the impact of that decision. Jeff also alluded to the Measure C campaign to save our parks, and that was especially poignant in my career with the city because, one, I got to know Jeff, who I really didn't know very much before that. The only time I ever talked to Jeff was in '93 when he called me and I was a candidate for a position on the Community Services Commission, and I think you were the mayor that year, or you were on the committee, I don't recall. And he interviewed me on the phone. I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was. But there was only one other candidate for appointment, and I knew that they didn't want to appoint him, so there I was on the Community Services Commission. And then in 1997, right after the Measure C campaign, Pat Birdsall, who was one of the greatest ladies in the world, came up to me and said she was planning to retire at the end of that year, and if I would agree to run for her seat, she would endorse me. Well, an endorsement from Pat Birdsall was gold. And so, just how these things fall into place is really amazing. We're going to sew up here and have some fun in a minute, but before we do, I really want to say something that doesn't get said enough these days, and as much as we remember the history and events like this, we kind of forget the Temecula Town Association. Yeah. And a lot of people have the memory of the TTA as some cantankerous people, some great people, sometimes at odds with the city and the chamber. But look what they did. Before there was ever a city of Temecula in 1989, there was a wonderful region here that was just starting to grow. And the town association was the city of Temecula before the city ever formed. And it was the local government. And they did make decisions that were critical to the eventual formation of the city. The city committee grew out of the TTA, people like Jimmy Moore and Perry Peters and a whole bunch of others. And so we can't forget that history because it's very, very important to this community. You hear people say you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from. It's always important for us to remember that. And I'll close with this. I was talking to Jimmy Moore last night. And he was telling me about Perry Peters, and this is incredible. I'm really anxious to see this. He said in 1989, when the city incorporated, Perry wrote a letter. Didn't send it to anybody. And his letter was the vision of what he wanted and what he felt the incorporation committee wanted the city to be in 25 years. It's amazing, isn't it? And here we are 25 years later, and Jimmy told me, because he saw the letter, he said, you can't believe that we accomplished everything that was in that letter. That gives me chills.
I can't wait to see it.
It's amazing. And I know Jimmy's trying to get Perry's permission to publish that somewhere. It's going to be fun to see. So with that, thank you all for being here. Thank you to the whole team that made this happen. It's terrific. Enjoy it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that letter either. That's fantastic. And to Jeff's point, there are some plaques. Make sure you see them out there on the monument sign there that sort of honor our rich history and the TTA, or the Temecula Town Association, as well. So At this time, we're going to need to cut a ribbon. So Alice and Gail, do we want to do this out in front, or do we want to do it here? So if we can have everybody go out front and then come back in for birthday cake and refreshments and tours.
1, 2, 3, cut.
Yay!